Time for some chalk talk here, people, as we talk about the NCAA March Madness tournament and in the East region, quite frankly, Joe, in any region that we have. I love this. And I just want to get this out of the way first. A lot of people always say the charm of the tournament is the upsets. And I always say this. In the moment, the upsets are fun until we realize Yale is going to wind up playing UConn instead of Auburn and or San Diego State. Give me your thought process on the upsets here, or would you rather a chalk-filled Sweet 16?
No, there's no question. I mean, listen, last year we had such a unique season and tournament where for the first time, Donnie, I think we didn't have any number one seeds when it came down to it, right? In the Final Four and in the championship. And listen, while that was nice, that's an anomaly. That never happens. Why? Because the tournament is set up where the cream rises to the top. And eventually, you know, what we didn't get this year is any big round of 32 major upsets, right? I mean, Oakland was a 14 seed that North Carolina State beat in overtime. So an 11 seed. So, and even they're not really an 11 seed, North Carolina State. I mean, kudos to them. Outside of Clemson, the cream is rising to the top here, and I think it's better basketball, more competitive games. I mean, look at the odds this week here in the Sweet 16. These are much more realistic than what we were getting early on here in the first couple of days. And then everyone thought because of last year, we're going to get all of these crazy upsets through the round of 32. And guess what? Yeah, no, there is a line in the sand between mediocre basketball and some of these elite teams, and we're starting to see it now.
Yeah, you take a look at UConn, right, choosing to be as the number one overall seed in that Eastern bracket. So basically, I like to say they're home for the holidays until the Final Four. And they played extremely well here. 91-52 win over Stetson very easily. UConn then moves on and takes on Northwestern, pounds them 75-58, which that score is much closer than the game actually was. That was really a blowout. Now they're going to take on San Diego State. So in the Eastern region, Joe, we have a 1, 2, 3, and a 5. San Diego State pounded Yale to go up against UConn. But if we're just looking at the odds here to win this region, it's still a heavy favorite for UConn. You take a look at UConn at a minus 230 price, the Cyclones plus 420, the Fighting Illini is 6-1, and San Diego State at a 12-1 price. So let's just start at the top here. In my bracket, I didn't pick UConn to win at all. I picked Houston. Most of my futures are based on UConn getting knocked out because I couldn't bet UConn at that price point, even if I thought they were the best overall team in the tournament. Is UConn, after these two games, the same as what you'd imagine, the better, or good luck playing UConn? What's your thoughts on them so far in the tournament?
Very much like we just had this conversation about the Boston Celtics. It's theirs to lose.
Yes,
period. There is just, they are a cut above, and I have said throughout the season, and we've had conversations, Donnie, about how, is it me or does this all seem to be like we've gotten a whole lot of parity and mediocre basketball, with a lot of conferences and a lot of teams, right? And we always said that, usually at the end of the season, there's always that handful of teams that kind of separate themselves. And you go, they're a cut above. Well, there's only one team this year that did that, and that was UConn. And they continue to do that, and there's a reason why they're a double-digit favorite even in the Sweet 16. It's theirs to lose here, Donnie, and I don't see them shooting themselves in the foot. It would take an extraordinary effort by somebody to have to outscore them and outplay them in order to win a championship.
Sometimes you need a little bit of breaks along the way. And I'm not saying UConn got any breaks here, but to me, honestly, when the brackets were first released, we looked at UConn and said, you got to be kidding me, man. They're the number one overall seed, and this is the path that they're going to have. Now, granted, San Diego State is a very good basketball team out of the Mountain West. But for me, Joe, I actually thought Auburn technically should have been the 2 seed. Now, granted, they were the 4, but I thought they were the second best team in this region. They don't have to play them because the thought process behind UConn was, look what they have to do just to get to the Final Four. Beat, Auburn, and then take on the winner of Illinois, Iowa State, which they still must do. But the path to me a little bit easier because I would have loved to have seen Auburn go up against UConn. Now, let me ask you this question about the East. If we're looking on the bottom side of that bracket, it's Illinois and Iowa State. For you, what's the better matchup for UConn? If you're UConn, who do you want to play out of those two teams?
I want to play Iowa State, but I don't even think it's close. I think they want to play Iowa State simply because they've got way more firepower than Iowa State. I don't care how good their defense is. You're not playing defense against UConn. And even if you do limit them, they still have guys upon guys that can shoot better than Iowa State. Illinois is the wild card here because Illinois, much like UConn, is a team where they've got 3-4 guys here. Any one of them can erupt and blow you out of the water. Shannon, I mean, they've got guys with experience. They've got depth, and they've got scoring. And that's where I think at this point on, Donnie, I can't look at Alabama because Alabama doesn't have any defense. I can't look at Iowa State because Iowa State doesn't have any offense, right? But Illinois is a team that can drop 90 on you and make it hard enough, and they're athletic enough to make life miserable for you on defense. I think they're the wild card. They beat Iowa State. I think that's going to be one true test here for UConn when they get past San Diego State this weekend.
UConn opened up the tournament, let's call it plus 350 at the FanDuel Sportsbook. They now sit at a plus 210 after the first 2 games here of the tournament. In your eyes, and again, value's in the eye of the beholder, is there still value on the plus 210? Because for my money, I didn't want to take the plus 350 knowing the bracket they had and also have to win 6 straight games in order to cash that ticket. If you look, they got through the first 2 rounds. There's still a tough path to go here. Would you bet that plus 210 right now on UConn, Joe?
Well, I would bet it. I mean, I bet them to the Final Four because I figured up until the Final Four. It was the only at plus money before the tournament. It was one of the only things you can get still at plus money there. But I figured if they can make it to the Final Four, then depending on who else is in there, because along the way, Donnie, who are they going to be? What are the spreads against the teams they're going to play here? Well, and we've got 10.5, 11 against San Diego State. What would it be against Iowa State or Illinois? I mean, they're still going to be huge favorites. So there's not a money line rollover opportunity there with UConn until you get to the Final Four, and then you'll have to see who they're matched up against. But I still think that I would probably rather have a plus 200 ticket on UConn as opposed to watching them make the finals and go, why didn't I bet the plus 200 when I had the opportunity?
So good on offense, so good on defense. Pedigree of a champion. They won last year. Head coach that's been there, done that before. They're a fun team to watch. Going to be a tough out, but still a lot more work to do. Let's flip it down to the West. And in that bracket, North Carolina, the number 1 overall seed, still available here for us. You take a look at, they're going to take on Alabama as a 4 seed, and the bottom of that bracket is Arizona as a 2 seed. And maybe a surprise to some here is Clemson. Surprise to me because I had Baylor winning that basketball game, then taking on Arizona. But if we're taking a look at the odds to win the Western region here, it's the Arizona Wildcats as the 2 seed, not the 1 seed as the favorite at a plus 110 price. North Carolina plus 180, followed by Alabama at 4-1. And then you take a look at Clemson at plus 950. For your money in this Western bracket right now with the Final Four of that bracket, who wins this region for you, Joe?
Well, it's, I had North Carolina pre-tournament. I got North Carolina still. And I just love the fact that the market continues to undervalue them as a number 1 seed, which is hilarious. And it started with Michigan State. And it kind of rolls over into Alabama here. Now, granted, nobody is saying Alabama isn't an elite offense. Of course they are, right? I mean, they're a phenomenal offense. But they are one of the worst defenses. They are a team that is allowing the second most points of any tournament team in the last 25 years. They're giving up an average of 82 points per game. That's okay in the round of 64 and 32, Donnie. But when you get to the round of 16, if you give 82 points to North Carolina, you lose. And that's just the way it is here. So the fact that it's only where it's at is kind of shocking to me here because I do think ultimately the Crimson Tide have no second pitch. Unless they score 100 points, they ain't winning this game because they're not going to be able to start North Carolina. And yet we continue, even right there, Don, look at the region odds. North Carolina's the 1 seed. You would think Arizona's the 1 seed here. And I don't get it. And granted, Arizona, on paper, probably the best team in all of college basketball. But we've seen time and time again them never live up to it.
Exactly, and that's always been the issue there. And the Pac-12 was a little bit down on this year. We know the talent in Arizona, but as you're right, It's putting that talent into play in that surprise game. Like, boy, we didn't see that coming from Arizona and playing this poorly. That usually creeps up, and it's an interesting matchup they're going to have against Clemson. Most people in their brackets are just picking the game. Had New Mexico as the 11th seed to upset Clemson here. Then you move on to the next round. Clemson basically was wild, other than some crazy stuff that happened at the end of that game where 2 missed free throws by Baylor actually could have sent that game to overtime. Clemson was the better team there, Joe, start to finish for those 40 minutes. So it's not a surprise that we're finding Clemson in this round. So my question to you would be, sometimes you overlook a conference, which I did. I thought North Carolina, far and away, Joe, was the best team in the ACC all season long. Wasn't really sure what Duke was going to do, and here's Duke advancing. Wasn't really sure NC State, who won 5 games in the tournament, they're advancing here. Certainly wasn't sure about Clemson, who finds themselves in the Sweet 16. Talk to me about Clemson winning those first 2 games, which not very many people had, winding up against Arizona, and the momentum that they can play. It's like, hey, we're the underdogs, so what? We've been the underdogs the past 2 games in the public's mind.
Yeah, I thought there was a ton of value on Clemson early on. I thought they were being undervalued against New Mexico. New Mexico was the public darling in the first game, right? Just came out of the Mountain West, won the championship, beat San Diego State. And boy, oh boy, Clemson, Clemson's horrible. What are you talking about? Another horrible ACC. Well, you look back on the season, Donnie, Clemson has played better on the road. They are one of the more experienced teams. They went to North Carolina and won. They went to Cameron Indoor. Should have won that one if the refs didn't blow it for them. And they were absolutely a 6 point. They've been undervalued the entire way here, and yet they continue to show there's a level of toughness in the ACC, and there's a level of toughness on this Clemson team where the moment's not going to be too big for them. They're shooting lights out. To me, that's a team you better worry about there, Arizona, because you're not going to roll over them like you rolled over the 2 mid-majors you played early on here.
Yeah, 1 and 2 if they meet in that region. Obviously, North Carolina and Arizona will be a fun up-tempo game. The similarities of what we're going to get between North Carolina and Alabama coming up on Thursday and Friday in the brackets. Now, if we take a look, the reason why I like North Carolina as well, you get the easy win over Wagner. Nobody expected Wagner to hang around North Carolina. They blew them out with ease. But I love the fact that sometimes you face a little bit of adversity in round number 2 because nobody wants to face Izzo in the tournament. They got a big win over Mississippi State, and also being down close to 10 points early in that game and rallying. The things I like about North Carolina is, number 1, you have great guard play. RJ Davis is fantastic. We also have a veteran like Baycott down low that can really secure the rebounds and the boards here. North Carolina moving forward, very interesting. But again, I always like to call myself on the carpet, Joe. I was down in the ACC. They're proving me wrong.
Again, it's they all kind of bunched up there, and we didn't separate them, and we probably should have there heading into the tournament.